Hey everybody, welcome back to the vlog. My name is Filip Latocha, and today we're going to be talking about the end of life of 4.5 pairs of Nike Zoom X Vaporfly Next Percent pairs that I've owned since the summer of 2019. It's going to be an interesting video because I don't have a first impression or a 100 or 200 plus miles or a race recap for these particular shoes. I only have end of life reviews, which I think is going to be kind of important for your sake if you've never had a pair of Vaporfly Next Percents, which I think at this point a lot of people have probably at least tried a pair or have at least heard enough about it because this is one of like Nike's most notorious shoes on the market right now, undisputedly. Before we get into it, definitely like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to have a lot of interesting content coming up. If this video gets 40 likes, I'll take a random dog for a 5K run. Does it have to be out of a shelter? I guess we'll make up those rules, but 30 likes. I think that's the number, right? 30. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. So, the Nike Vaporfly Zoom X Next Percent. Ugh, butchered that. Yeah, obviously it's Nike's most notorious race shoe, next to the original Vaporfly 4%, the 4% Flyknit. This is the shoe that's been pretty much in high command and control of the 2019 race season, I think beginning since the summer of 2019. And then, of course, when the marathons started rolling around in late 2019 and early 2020, this was the shoe that everybody had their eyes on for a long time. So, in my course of running, I have owned 5 pairs of these, and as you can see, this is a very expensive video. At this point in time, I would say I'm definitely a very big hobby runner. Definitely not an amateur runner, at least. I'm not great. I'm good at running. To the point where I'm willing to invest money to make sure I have a comfortable shoe that rides well, that's very stable, that's good for my feet, that isn't going to hurt me in any sort of way. So those are going to be some of the things we're going to be talking about as to why I've owned 5 pairs of Next Percents in my current running career, and probably still counting depending on how the technology goes. So let's get into it. So in the summer of 2019, this was the pair of Vaporfly Next Percents I've owned. This pair has approximately 300 plus miles. Definitely for sure, because check out the bottoms of these. That shred right there is something incredible to look at. Of course, because of the ground that we run on in Chicago and the trails that we have out there. Your foot will definitely supinate slightly if you're running on the ground that is slightly angled, that's facing the lake, so rainwater can go down into the lake. If you're running in that direction, which is generally from south to north along the lakefront path, you are going to wear the outside of the shoe a lot more than the inside. And that's been the case for me for pretty much the last 3 years of my running career since I've graduated away from heel striking. So that's kind of the shoe I want to talk about here, is of course like how clean that came off. And yeah, you can see maybe in this video, I hope you can, that the carbon plate is also slightly shaved, kind of beaten up, because of course at some point when you're running with this particular shoe, it does sound like a horse's hoof on the ground as the carbon plate starts hitting, and you lose the advantage of the carbon plate when it has direct contact with the ground, in my opinion, because the plate is supposed to be working with the rubber, with the foam, to give you a spring effect and not hit the ground and just have just the like dull response. Other fun facts with this shoe. This is the first time I ever run in a shoe that I wasn't fit for, and this is particularly this pair. What do I mean by that? So it was the Rock and Roll 2019 half marathon, and I had this shoe for about 4 days before that race, and I said, all right, cool, we're going to race in this shoe instead of the 4% Flyknit. And basically, my biomechanical response to this shoe was so much more different than the Flyknit 4% that I actually got extremely exhausted halfway into the marathon, or halfway into that half marathon, to the point where I couldn't keep up a PR pace, and I actually lost my PR by about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes that race day. So it was the first time I got humbled by a race shoe that I wasn't ready physically to run in. And then after that, I started training in this shoe. started running a lot faster more often, to the point where I can get used to, running in a very pristine carbon plate shoe. What else can we say about this particular pair? We got some wear and tear up here as well. And fun fact, I once stepped on like this twig that literally went through the rubber of the shoe right about there. It wasn't a very sharp or deep piece of twig, but it definitely went through the foam, so that was something really interesting to note there. So that was summer 2019. Fall 2019 brings us to this pair of Vaporfly Next Percents. As you can see by the writing on the side of the foam there, it's my Chicago Marathon finishing time. This is probably my most noble pair of Vaporfly Next Percents that I owned. Again, this was the shoe I used during the Chicago Marathon. I also used it for training a lot during the autumn season. The wear on this particular pair is not as bad, but the difference between the summer pair and the autumn pair is how much more dust there is on the foam. I can't really explain too much about that, other than maybe when the leaves fall, there's a lot more dust on the ground. Maybe I was running on the streets more. Maybe there was some slush. A lot of factors that can go into why there's so much more dust on these shoes. But yes, these shoes did drive me to an all-time marathon PR that's officially deemed a marathon PR versus the Chicago Marathon virtual race that I did this year. We'll talk about that one as we get to that pair. So, good times with these shoes. About 250 miles in this particular pair. As you can see, the shred and the opening on this carbon plate is not nearly as bad as my previous pair. Let's go into autumn/winter 2019/2020. So, interesting story with this particular pair of Next Percents. I originally wasn't going to get these. I was originally going to stick with the Zoomfly 3 as a training shoe for the Tokyo Marathon race season, because I had qualified and I already bought my flight tickets, and that's essentially where this vlog originally stems from, is training for the Tokyo Marathon in 2020. So, at that time, 2019, at the beginning of that season, I had broken my foot, and it was due to running probably in a bad pair of shoes. Maybe I was malnutritioned, I wasn't getting enough calcium, vitamin D in my body, and basically there was a lot of paranoia and a lot of concern, basically from people around me, that maybe the shoes were the problem as to why my foot broke in that case. I didn't like the Zoomfly 3s originally when I ran in them, because they didn't feel anything like the Next Percents, so I obviously kind of deferred away from them. And I did get, I guess, some reinforcement from my parents at the time, who said, hey, listen, if the shoe is comfortable, just run in it, right? So spend the extra, I think at the time it was $100 or $50 extra for the Vaporfly Next Percent versus the Zoomfly 3. And I settled with the pink pair because I had two greens and I just wanted to, mix it up a little bit. The shred on these, again, very similar to the two previous pairs, where there's this huge opening on the side of the shoe. But there's a slight difference here. I vaguely remember this with this particular pair. There's a lot of damage on the Nike logo and the insignia on this particular pair. I do also recall this particular shoe feeling slightly uncomfortable to run in. Like, it was slightly tighter, and I can feel my foot almost, it's like a headache in my foot. I can't really describe it, but it was slightly too tight in this particular shoe. And at some points I was actually using one of my old green shoes as a replacement for this pink one. And to this day, I'm not sure why this particular shoe had like a slight inconvenience to it that I didn't like running in very much. So yeah, this is the shoe I used for a lot of my Tokyo Marathon training. And yeah, basically I used it a lot in the snow. I used it when I was training up in Minnesota for some stuff as well. And yeah, it was again a very well... It's like hot out here, so all the windows are open in my house. But anyways, this was a fun shoe to run in overall. It didn't last until the Tokyo Marathon, because I was regularly putting 50 to 60 miles a week in this pair. Okay, anyways, moving on to the pair. The next percent I was going to take to Tokyo Marathon 2020. It is this particular pair, which, in my opinion, might still be my most favorite pair. It's the Ekiden edition, or the Ekiden edition. I don't know. I bought these about a month before race day, and I was real stoked to use them. And I was running in them regularly during, the taper from the marathon. And then, of course, they announced the COOF, and flights to Asia were stopped entirely. The Tokyo Marathon Association basically canceled the race for the everyday runner and only allowed it for elites. And it kind of left me with this pair of shoes that I was going to use for racing that I never really used for any race at that point. And yeah, basically all that happened was I broke some 5K PRs in my just on the side unofficially. So I believe I ran an 18:30 5K time unofficially in this particular pair, maybe even like a 17:50 or just 18 flat. But again, this shoe has never actually seen a legitimate race in their existence, which is kind of a shame. That's just where my eagerness of running in an X% always occurs. But again, we can look a little bit at the bottoms of them. I'm actually looking at this one now, and I'm trying to understand why this one has like dust and salt on them. I wonder if I was running in the snow with these at some point, maybe like early spring 2020. But again, the opening here is the same on this particular X%. This pair probably has, based on this plate, definitely about 300 plus miles. It was used very often during, I'm going to say, my usual training block, and then at some point when I started getting more into like the Peg 37s and the Infinity Reacts, I kind of sidelined these for a little bit, and they kind of just retired from my lineup. So that was spring 2020, and now this goes to my current pair of X%, which still have some life in them, but again, this is the pair that I still use to this day, but I haven't used since the virtual Chicago Marathon, which has been a little bit under a month from now. Tells you how long it's been since I've used these. But anyways, yeah, this is the pair that I started using in the summer of 2020. I broke them first in while I was training up in the mountains of Big Sky, Montana, Silverthorne, Colorado, and these are the ones I bought mostly because I enjoyed the color scheme, and yeah, I was just looking forward to running a virtual Chicago Marathon in these. In terms of wear and tear, again, there's still, in my opinion, plenty of life in these shoes, even though this is opened up pretty bad here on the bottoms. The outer insignias, not too bad of a shape. I think this particular foot has a little bit of cracking on it, but again, that's only expected after you've put in about 150 to 200 plus miles in said X%. This is not supposed to be deemed an everyday trainer shoe, but what do I know? I'll train in like a race shoe as an everyday trainer because I just feel like it, I guess. Yeah, and then of course, the virtual Chicago Marathon, in this particular pair, the unofficial time, which I'm largely disputing with myself as well, is about a 3:07:56, so just a sub 3:08. It was not a Boston qualifier, that's okay. It was a virtual race, it wasn't going to count anyways, we just did it for fun. So, basically that's where we are in the game of the X%. In terms of investing in another pair, I definitely will at some point in the future. I just don't see the point in buying a pair right now when I have a pair of Brooks Hyperion Elites in my lineup, Tempo X%, an Alphafly that I can use for race day, and then a ton of everyday racer shoes. Maybe when the time comes, maybe I'll invest in a X% that's in the Mango color series, but right now, no particular reason to, especially since this particular pair still has some life in it. So, that's kind of where we are with the Tempo X%. My overall impressions, of course, is that it is one of the best racing shoes on the market. If you choose to use it as an everyday trainer or a tempo runner, by all means, go for it. Follow your heart, not your wallet on these shoes. Actually, definitely listen to your wallet first, even though your heart definitely knows what shoes it wants to run in normally. So anyways, that's the end of the video. I'll know in the comments below how you've been using your Next percents, if you've been using them as everyday trainers. Have you used them in a race in 2020 at all? How many pairs do you guys have? Am I the only person that has like 5+ pairs, or does someone have like 10+ and is just laughing at me for reviewing 5 of them only? Anyways, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching the video. See you guys real soon.